On Tuesday, you're going to choose a path for our state and nation. Down one road is extremism, where Roe versus Wade is overturned and being a moderate is a curse. That's the road Sarah Palin, the Tea Party, and Marco Rubio want to take us down. It's a dangerous road, and the polls say I'm the only one who can stop them. So if you're sick of the extremism and the gridlock, then join our fight for common sense. I'm Charlie Crist, and I approve this message. And don't forget to find me on line 9 on your ballot.
Charlie Crist urging Florida voters to avoid the road of extremism and gridlock during his 2010 run for Senate, but notably having to close with a reminder that he's going to be 9 spots down on the ballot because he was running as an independent. That race did not go his way. But nobody thinks that Charlie Crist's role in politics is over, especially not now. Joining us now for the interview tonight is the former Republican governor of Florida, Charlie Crist, who is now an independent. Governor, thank you very much for being here. It's really nice to have you here.
Good to be with you, Rachel. Thank you.
Republicans have not stopped the process of purging moderation from their ranks, not even after the results from this last election. In the couple of years since you fell victim to that process in your former party, how do you think it has affected them?
Badly. I think that, you know, the notion of continuing to put forward people that are more extreme rather than moderate, and to continue to push out people that want to talk about common sense solutions to problems that affects people's lives every single day is not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for disaster. And if they continue on that path, I think that's what we're going to continue to see. Less and less gains in elections, and it's unfortunate for the Republican Party, but if that's the path they decide to go down, that is the fate that they will enjoy.
Is this one of those things where you see it happening in both parties? You think there's a mirror image where it's happening on both sides, or is this sort of unique to the Republican Party right now, that they're going through a process that the rest of American politics is not going through?
Well, it seems that way to me, Rachel. I don't see the Democrats doing this sort of purging, if you will. I do see the Republicans doing it, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know what has stimulated it. I suspect that part of it began with the economic downturn. People get frustrated, they get depressed, unhappy, and, you know, the ones to blame are not going to be them. It's going to be some other entity or individual. And, you know, it's got to be, someone's got to be held accountable. And whether, in fact, the person held accountable really is the one who deserves it is almost meaningless, really doesn't matter. But that's what's happening. And, you know, reasonable people like Richard Lugar and others that did not survive a primary challenge, which would have happened to me if I'd have stayed in the primary with Senator Rubio, and I wish him the best. You know, I want him to do well because I want my state to do well. But I am sorry about the fact that it seems that the Republican Party, or at least some of the party, I mean, my mom and dad are still Republicans. They're good people. They have common sense. I love them to death. But the leadership in the party, at least so far, seems bent on continuing down this path, and that's unfortunate for our country.
Let me ask you about a policy matter that we've been reporting on because of this election season, but also more broadly. The Palm Beach Post said a couple of days ago that during your term as governor, Republican Party leaders approached you as governor, talking to you about changing early voting in order to suppress Democratic voter turnout. How do those conversations go? And when Republicans, and you were a Republican at the time, were having those conversations, was the conversation explicitly about doing that for partisan gain?
Well, there were explicit indications that that was occurring, and I think they knew better than to confront me directly with it, because I think it was pretty well known how I felt about trying to be more fair, more open, more inclusive, and making sure that we had a government, a state government here in Florida that would continue to reach out and work with Democrats across the aisle at the time, and work with all people. And so usually they would go to somebody in my administration and say, you know, can you run this by the governor and see what he thinks? And, you know, whenever somebody would come to me with that kind of proposal, I'd say, well, tell them not to waste their time. It'll get vetoed if they try it. And I just think it's wrong. And it's why I ended up signing the executive order, Rachel, to expand the early voting hours back in 2008. And it really did displease a lot of Republicans. And but you know, when you're elected governor of your state, you're not elected the governor of the Republicans or the governor of the Democrats. You're elected governor of the people. and you have a duty and an obligation, at least that's what I felt, to look out for all the people and all of their interests. And you're not supposed to be partisan when you're carrying out something as precious as the right to vote, something that people have fought and died for in our country. And I just felt partisanship involved in democracy at that level was absolutely wrong.
I feel like because of your position and because of where you were governor and because of how recently it was, I feel like you're sort of in this unique position to shed light for us about what's in between these two parallel tracks that we've got. Because what it seems like is going on with these restrictions of the ability to vote, just putting all these new hurdles in between people and their ability to cast a vote, whether it's shortening early voting or whether it's requiring documentation you never had to show before in order to vote, all of these different things, restricting voter registration. It seems clear that it's being done for a partisan purpose. But then when you listen to Republicans talk about it, they always say, oh, no, it's not partisan at all. It's only about voter fraud. There's this big problem with voter fraud, and it is about voter integrity. Is it clear to you that that is just bunk, that that is just a story that's being told to cover up why they're really doing it?
It's crystal clear to me. You couldn't be more right, in my humble opinion. And, you know, certainly we can say this about all these roadblocks that are put in the way of people exercising the right to vote. And we saw it in dramatic fashion this last election day in Florida, in my home state. How do you think that makes me and my fellow Floridians feel when, you know, MSNBC is able to call all these other states, and the one that's outstanding and lingering for so long is the Sunshine State? There's a lot of good people here in Florida, and it's very discouraging to see that kind of black eye put on us when it's not necessary at all. And the fact that there's some massive fraud going on as the excuse or the red herring to do that is laughable. I mean, the obvious reason, why else would you take 14 days of early voting and you know, condense it down to 8 days and make that more difficult, or make it even harder for people to do absentee balloting here in Florida? You know, certainly it's not voter encouragement, to say the least. It is voter discouragement. And I think absolutely the wrong thing to do is, as I said earlier, make this precious right more difficult to exercise than easier. This ought to be something that we push as hard as we possibly can to make sure that every Floridian, every American has the opportunity to vote their will and to exercise their right to elect their leaders in the most convenient way possible. And people who stand in the way of doing that should be held accountable for having done so. It is absolutely unprincipled, it is wrong, and it shouldn't happen. And here's the irony. Floridians took care of business. On Election Day, they took care of business, and they stood in line even after the presidential election had been called nationally. Floridians stayed in those lines because they wanted to cast that ballot. They were told, in essence, this is what you cannot do. And when you tell people that, they're like, really? Who are you to tell me what to do? And so they were determined, they became infuriated, and they absolutely made up their mind they're going to exercise that precious right and cast that ballot no matter what, and they did. And God bless Floridians for it.
Charlie Crist, former governor of Florida, demonstrating tonight why Republicans are so freaked out about the prospect of you re-entering politics, sir. Thank you very much for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel. My pleasure.
You.